The 2020 presidential election ended, but its shadow lingers. Former President Donald Trump continues to cast doubt on its legitimacy. He insists, without evidence, that widespread fraud stole his victory. These claims have been repeatedly rejected by courts and election officials, including members of his own party. Yet they continue to resonate with a segment of the population, fueling distrust in democratic institutions. Trump's refusal to concede defeat and his persistent allegations of a stolen election have shaken the foundations of American democracy. His rhetoric has emboldened supporters to challenge election results and harass election workers. It has also deepened political divisions, making it increasingly difficult to find common ground. The January 6th Capitol riot stands as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by misinformation and election denialism. Fueled by Trump's false claims, a mob of his supporters stormed the Capitol in an attempt to prevent the certification of Joe Biden's victory. This unprecedented assault on American democracy underscored the fragility of the electoral process and the need to safeguard it against future attacks. Despite the lack of evidence, Trump's claims of election fraud have found a receptive audience among some Republicans. A significant portion of the party's base continues to believe that the 2020 election was stolen. This belief has become a litmus test within the GOP, with those who dare to challenge Trump's narrative facing fierce backlash and primary challenges. As the 2024 presidential election approaches, Trump has made it clear that his fight against alleged election fraud is far from over. He has repeatedly hinted at his intention to run again, vowing to take back our country and prevent a repeat of what he claims happened in 2020. His focus on election integrity has become a central theme of his post-presidency, fueling concerns about further attempts to undermine the democratic process. Trump's rhetoric has shifted from baseless claims of widespread fraud to a more targeted approach, focusing on specific states, counties, and even individual polling places. He has seized upon isolated instances of irregularities, often taken out of context, to cast doubt on the overall integrity of elections. This strategy, while lacking in evidence, has proven effective in sowing distrust and creating an atmosphere of suspicion. One of Trump's primary targets has been the state of Georgia, where he narrowly lost to Biden in 2020. He has repeatedly attacked the state's election officials, including Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, accusing them of rigging the election against him. Trump's pressure campaign on Raffensperger, which included a now infamous phone call urging him to find enough votes to overturn the results, is currently under investigation by a special grand jury in Fulton County. Beyond Georgia, Trump has also set his sights on other battleground states, including Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. He has endorsed candidates who support his claims of election fraud and has called for stricter voting laws, which critics argue are designed to suppress voter turnout among Democratic constituencies. Trump's relentless attacks on the integrity of elections have had a chilling effect on those responsible for administering them. Election workers, once largely anonymous public servants, have found themselves thrust into the political spotlight, facing harassment, threats, and even violence from Trump supporters, convinced that the 2020 election was stolen. This unprecedented wave of intimidation has undermined public trust in the electoral process and made it increasingly difficult to recruit and retain qualified poll workers. The Brennan Center for Justice, a nonpartisan law and policy institute, has documented a surge in threats against election officials since the 2020 election. In a survey of election officials across the country, 1 in 3 reported feeling unsafe because of their job, and 1 in 6 reported being threatened because of their position. These threats have taken various forms, including online harassment, death threats, and even armed confrontations at polling places. The impact of this intimidation campaign has been profound. Election officials have reported feeling demoralized, burned out, and fearful for their safety and that of their families. Some have chosen to resign from their positions rather than face continued harassment, while others have reported difficulty recruiting and training new poll workers. This exodus of experienced personnel has raised concerns about the ability of election offices to adequately staff polling places and process ballots in future elections. The Justice Department has responded to this crisis by establishing a task force dedicated to investigating and prosecuting threats against election workers. However, the task force faces an uphill battle. Many of the threats are made online, often anonymously, making it difficult to identify and prosecute the perpetrators. Moreover, the First Amendment provides broad protection for political speech, even if it is hateful or threatening, making it challenging to bring charges in some cases. Section 4. A nation divided reactions to Trump's accusations and threats. Trump's pronouncements regarding election integrity have elicited a wide range of reactions, reflecting the deep partisan divisions that plague American politics. His supporters, many of whom remain convinced that the 2020 election was stolen, applaud his efforts to expose what they see as widespread voter fraud and to hold those responsible accountable. They view his attacks on election officials and his calls for stricter voting laws as necessary steps to restore faith in the democratic process. Conversely, Trump's critics, including Democrats, many independents, and even some Republicans, condemn his rhetoric as dangerous and undemocratic. They argue that his baseless claims of election fraud are undermining public trust in the electoral process and eroding the very foundations of American democracy. They accuse him of inciting violence against election workers and of attempting to disenfranchise voters, particularly those who tend to vote Democratic. Legal experts have expressed alarm at Trump's pronouncements, warning that his repeated attempts to overturn the results of a free and fair election could have lasting damage on the rule of law. They argue that his rhetoric is reminiscent of authoritarian leaders who seek to cling to power by delegitimizing democratic institutions and intimidating their opponents. They warn that if Trump's actions are left unchecked, they could set a dangerous precedent, emboldening future leaders to disregard election results and seize power illegally. The debate over election integrity has become a flashpoint in American politics, further polarizing an already divided nation. It has fueled a climate of distrust and suspicion, making it increasingly difficult to have civil conversations about important issues. The stakes are high, as the future of American democracy may depend on the ability of citizens to come together and find common ground on this critical issue. Section 5. Democracy at a Crossroads. The potential impact of Trump's rhetoric. Trump's persistent assault on the legitimacy of elections poses a significant threat to American democracy. By undermining faith in the electoral process, he erodes the very foundation upon which the country's system of government rests. If a significant portion of the population loses confidence in the ability of elections to reflect the will of the people, it could lead to widespread political instability and even violence. One of the most concerning consequences of Trump's rhetoric is the normalization of election denialism. By repeatedly making false claims about widespread fraud, he has created an environment in which it is increasingly acceptable to question the legitimacy of elections without evidence. This has emboldened some of his supporters to take matters into their own hands, as evidenced by the January 6th Capitol riot. Furthermore, Trump's attacks on election workers have created a climate of fear and intimidation that could have a chilling effect on civic participation. As election workers face increasing harassment and threats, it will become more difficult to recruit and retain qualified individuals to staff polling places and administer elections. This could lead to longer lines, increased wait times, and a greater likelihood of errors, further eroding public trust in the process. The long-term consequences of Trump's actions are difficult to predict, but they could be profound. If left unchecked, his assault on democratic norms could weaken the United States' standing in the world and embolden authoritarian leaders abroad. It could also lead to a future where elections are no longer seen as a legitimate means of transferring power, paving the way for violence and instability. Section 6. Safeguarding the vote. The importance of election integrity and public trust. In the face of unprecedented challenges to election integrity, safeguarding the right to vote and restoring public trust is crucial. This requires a multi-pronged approach involving elected officials, election administrators, the media, and the public. Elected officials must affirm their commitment to free and fair elections and condemn interference. They must avoid baseless fraud claims and misinformation that undermine public confidence. Election administrators should prioritize security and transparency, ensuring all eligible voters have access. They must educate the public about the electoral process and address concerns. The media plays a crucial role by providing accurate and unbiased election information. Journalists must fact-check fraud claims and hold officials accountable. They should avoid amplifying misinformation or sensationalizing incidents. The public must be informed, participate responsibly, and respect election results. Educate yourself, register, vote, and respect the results, even if your candidate loses. The future of democracy depends on upholding free and fair elections and protecting the right to vote. By working together, Americans can ensure their elections remain a beacon of hope and a model for democracies worldwide.